Yes people, what's going on? It's Ashton here, and what would you do if I attacked you with a shiny, pointy, hurty metal object? Well, I can safely tell you that the first thing I'm going to be doing if you're attacking me with a shiny, pointy, hurty metal object is definitely judging that object. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be looking at all of the heirlooms in Apex Legends, putting them in a tier list from worst to best. Now, this is solely based on my opinion, and I do have a few factors going into the placement of each heirloom. We'll go into that a bit later, but let's get right on with today's video. So unlike with most of my tier lists, I decided to only go with 4 tiers for this one, as there are only 9 heirlooms in Apex right now, and I feel like that's not quite enough to have a lot of tiers, and I feel like it would be pretty harsh to put one heirloom right at the bottom because none of them are actually that bad. They're all really cool, and I just like them for different reasons. So obviously there is going to be an heirloom at the bottom tier for this video, and that is going to be C tier this video. So that's honestly, starting off at C tier, that's not that bad. A C tier heirloom is still good, but as I said, there is going to be one at the bottom, and for me, the worst heirloom in Apex right now has got to be Bangalore's latest heirloom, the new cold steel melee weapon that Bangalore got, the knife, the data knife. Then we've seen a little bit of lore for this with Wraith and Bangalore fighting over it, but honestly, for me, this heirloom has got to be the heirloom with the least amount of character to it. All of the other heirlooms are kind of very distinguishable for their characters and have a lot of traits and characteristics about them that really define them to their legend, but for me, this knife doesn't scream Bangalore. Of course, you've got the bottle caps all over the knife as well, which is cool, it's a nice little touch, but there's nothing too personal to Bangalore on this knife. Personally, I also don't really like the shape of it. I know that's weird, but aesthetically, I'm not a big fan of how this looks. I do like the glowing part of it though, and I think it had a lot more potential, but for me, this knife just lacks a lot of detail, and even in the inspecs, there are only 2 or 3 inspecs for this, and none of them are really that exciting when you compare them to other heirlooms, so for me, Bangalore's knife has to come at the bottom, unfortunately. Now, that is going to be the only heirloom I've got down in C tier, and so we're going to be immediately moving up into the B tier, where we have a few more heirlooms this time. For me, the second worst heirloom in the game right now is actually going to be Mirage's statue, Too Much Wit. So making this tier list is really hard because I actually do like this heirloom. I think it's extremely fitting for Mirage. I mean, look at it. We all know how Mirage is, and this is the perfect way of just emphasizing his character. He's so full of himself, yet he's so awkward and shy, and the voice lines that come with this heirloom with each inspect is amazing, and it is so funny. But for me, it's just not that cool compared to other heirlooms. You've got knives and clubs and hammers, and then Mirage is just running around with this little statue. Like I say, this statue is perfectly suited to Mirage, and I'm super glad that this is his heirloom, but that doesn't mean I particularly value it over the other heirlooms, which I think are just a lot cooler in my opinion. Now, the next one I'm going to be putting in here at B tier was extremely hard to put down here at B tier, but I just can't justify it being any higher, and that's going to be Ravensbite Bloodhound's heirloom. Now, before you go crazy, this is an extremely cool heirloom. I love the glowing red blade, but it's the lack of inspecs for me that really hurt this one. And the inspect that we do get, it's not that interesting for me compared to other heirlooms, I've got to be honest. It's tough because aesthetically, I love this heirloom. I love the axe, I love how it looks, but the animations really let this one down for me. Even the sound that you get when you punch someone, it's nothing special. For me, the redeeming qualities of this axe is the fact that it does just look so cool. And when you punch people, you do see some red sparks flying out in every direction, and that is cool. I do like that added touch. But it is up against some tough competition, and for me, it's just not got enough to bring it any higher than this tier, and it does pain me, because I do love this heirloom. And the last heirloom in B tier is unfortunately my mains heirloom. It's Pathfinder's boxing gloves. Now, when these boxing gloves first came out, everyone was amazed at how amazing the weapon inspect was for these things. It's so long and intricate and has so many details in there, and it was just so funny. Everyone loved the inspect for these things, but as time went on and more heirlooms came out, Pathfinder's inspect became less and less impressive as Respawn kept upping the game for how good their inspects were and adding more than one inspect per heirloom. The boxing gloves also used to have an added sound effect whilst running around, and it did get a little bit obnoxious. It was quite annoying sometimes, but I do wish it was included in some way even now. Even if it was just a little bit quieter, I did really like that. I think it added to the character of the gloves and certainly suited Pathfinder as a character. I think the thing that keeps Pathfinder's gloves down in B tier for me, rather than moving up into A tier, is the fact that it just obscures so much of the screen because it is a two-handed heirloom, so it's not just going to be restricted to the right hand side of your screen, it's also on the left as well, and for me sometimes it can be a little bit distracting. Moving on now from the B tier and up into the A tier, and the next heirloom in line to be talked about is going to be Octane's butterfly knife. Now again, this is just one of the most fitting heirlooms on the game. It fits Octane's character so well, and it is down to the amount of detail that they put into this butterfly knife that makes it that way. You've obviously got the stim juice and the needle in here, which when you inspect, by the way, which is another thing we're going to get onto, it stabs into Octane, and that is just so perfect for his character because we all know that Octane pretty much lives off of his stims. But as I said, the inspect for this thing, at the time and even now for me, is one of the most beautiful pieces of animation I've ever seen. Partner that with the fact that the heirloom is not too visually intrusive for when you're actually playing the game, and you also get a unique running animation with this thing. I really do like this heirloom, and for me it does deserve its place up in A tier. But the other heirloom we've got up in A tier is going to be Lifeline's shock sticks, and these things are just so unique and perfect for Lifeline's character that I couldn't put them any lower than the top of A tier. I mean, who would have thought that we'd see drumsticks as an heirloom in Apex? I certainly didn't think so, but when they came out, I was surprised at how cool they actually turned out. Again, this is an heirloom that only has one inspect, and it is a two-handed heirloom, so it does have those things going for it which aren't necessarily good, but it's way less visually intrusive than Pathfinder's boxing gloves in my opinion, and the inspect that we do get is really cool. The thing I love most about Lifeline's shock sticks are the different animations you get for attacking people, and the sound effects when you actually connect a punch. It sounds amazing. Lifeline shock sticks are definitely one of the most unique and fitting heirlooms in the game right now, and that's why it deserves its place at the top of A tier in my opinion. So then we're left with the S tier, which is obviously the top tier of heirlooms in Apex Legends, and coming in at number 3 is going to be Caustics Hammer. Now don't get me wrong, I hate Caustic as a character as much as most people do, although I do have 2k kills on him, but I don't like him, I swear. I played a lot with this heirloom in that time, as you can imagine, and my favourite thing about this heirloom has got to be, well, pretty much everything. It has no negative impacts. I mean, look at it, it's unique in the sense that it has the caustic skull on the back, which I've always thought was really weird at first, but the more you play with it, the more you kind of realise that it suits Caustic's character perfectly to have this strange but also scary looking skull on the back, and all the different inspects. I mean, there are at least 4 or 5 inspects with this heirloom, and they are all super cool. My favourite, personally, is going to be the coffee mug, because there is nothing better than killing someone and then taking a sip of coffee like it's nothing. It's really cool. This heirloom also has a really good bonking sound when you punch people. I mean, you really do bonk them on the head. It is a really distinguishable sound, and it sounds amazing. Since using this heirloom, I've always referred to punching people as bonking them, and I don't think I'll ever stop. Another really cool detail with this thing is that when you actually land punches with it, gas comes out of the hammer. That's really cool. But the cherry on top of the cake with this heirloom is the fact that it spins around in Caustic's hands whilst he's running around sometimes. I mean, it just looks really cool. Anything that is spinning with heirlooms is cool. I mean, we'll talk about that later on, but yeah, spinning heirlooms is cool, and I like that they added that small animation into this heirloom. The second best heirloom in Apex, in my opinion, has got to be Gibraltar's War Club. This thing is a literal torch. If you run around with it in a dark spot, it will light the way. Just like Gibraltar, because we all know he's lighting up your life, baby. But in all seriousness, this thing looks vicious. It's shiny, but it's also sharp and scary, and for me, the best thing about it is, again, the inspects on this heirloom. They just blow out the competition completely. In my honest opinion, this heirloom has the best inspects out of every heirloom in Apex Legends, and not all of them even include the heirloom itself, but I really like that. You get a bit of insight into Gibraltar's character just by owning this thing. My favourite inspect for this is when he takes off his arm shield and looks it up and down, because it obviously changes with every different skin you wear and you see something different every time. Again, the sound design for this thing is really good, because when you pull out the War Club, pretty much every time he smacks it against his arm shield, making a really cool sound, and obviously visually that's pretty cool as well. And similarly to Caustics Hammer, you've also got a pretty strong bonking sound, and that's always an added bonus. But my favourite heirloom and the best heirloom in Apex Legends, as a lot of you will have guessed, and a lot of you will probably be quite surprised at actually, is Wraith's Heirloom in my opinion. Now I know what a lot of you are thinking, the inspect for Wraith's Heirloom is highly regarded by most as the worst inspect on Apex, and I'd have to agree it's pretty poor. But this was the OG heirloom of Apex Legends. Back in the day in Seasons 1 and 2, if you had this thing, you were the cool kid on the block. Visually, this thing is stunning, and I love how minimalistic the animations are. Now, obviously I've been saying all the different animations for the heirlooms are cool, and I stand by that, they are really cool, but to have one that doesn't have all that many and is pretty simple is also nice as well, and it works perfectly for this heirloom and Wraith's character. It has a really good stabbing sound when you do punch people, and there's also a pretty cool visual effect where a small void will open up every time you punch people. I really like that. But the one factor that this heirloom has over other heirlooms is the fact that it is a very spammable inspect heirloom. I mean, the full inspect itself is pretty lackluster and boring, but if you just spam the inspect button, Wraith will spin around the kunai in her hands. I mean, you've definitely seen this on all of the tryhards YouTube channels and Twitch channels, and I don't blame them. It looks amazing. It looks so cool. But guys, there you have it. There is my Apex Legends heirlooms tier list, and I think maybe in a few seasons time I might have to come back and revise this once we've had a few more heirlooms come out. Let me know in the comments below what your heirloom tier list would be and why. I love to hear it. Do just remember that everyone has their opinion and you're entitled to your own as well. You don't always have to agree with me, so let me know what you think in the comments down below. But until next time, I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy and goodbye.